Hey, y'all. This is Reverence for Impulse, and I'm Weena Pauly-Tarr. This podcast is my attempt to more deeply understand and explore impulse through conversations with people that inspire me. We step into connection without any planning or agenda, but with respect for the impulses that brought us here and shape how we are when we're together. I'm so glad you followed your impulse to listen in. Anie Boudreau, what a gorgeous human. I met Anie and around 2008, I think, in a yoga therapy training we were both doing, and I was instantly struck by their magnetism and their shiny clarity of presence. But being live and in conversation with Anie was just exciting and stimulating. They've been working for over 20 years in the fields of contemplative psychology, yoga therapy, and psychedelic integration therapy. And they have this incredible educational space called School of Reverence, where they teach the embodied wonderment method. We covered topics of impulsivity, addiction recovery, compassionate presence, yoga therapy. Anie discusses her own brain injury and the symptoms of how they work with that. Anie is just truly sparkly, as they expertly determine. And I felt so lucky to have this conversation with them. And I'm so happy that you are listening in. I wanted to record because I think I have when it's like a strategy for when I'm in a tender place too, that I want to capture, because it's a little way of like holding on to what feels precious. So yeah. The mind is not only in the head. I have to take these off. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And thanks for witnessing. I think it's helpful for me to contact myself, like you were saying, before I'm with somebody, and it's not something I do. And I can sort of charge into contact. But when I do that, there's a limit to the depth of it. And so taking the moment to contact myself and then witnessing you contact yourself, I think is what lets me reside more in my heart. And that feels really like a gift. So it's nice to start there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just reminding me, like, as I've been diving into what it means to decolonize my body and my mind, how when I was taking cultural safety protocol courses, the one that stuck out with me lots is, I don't know that it was said in this way, but I took it as like, you white people, you just want to get straight to the point. Like, how we do this. We land with each other, like indigenous folks were like, we like sit and eat first, like we like land with each other. Then we get into stuff, because the landing is the stuff. Like this is the stuff. And so I feel that that's what we just did, like when you're talking about impulses, this conditioned impulse to get to the thing, but like, what is the thing? Ultimately, it's us communing with each other, connecting,
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a lovely reminder.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, I have a lot of questions that I was, my challenge is to not prepare to come together and to ward off planning, because I love planning. I'm quite a planner, which is an interesting thing that I've taken up such a world of improvisation. But inside, like, diverting the questions was more of a like real curiosity, first around what does that even mean to you? And how do you relate to it?
Mhm.
That's really where the beginning of it lies. And yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting because impulsive is the word that I can't seem to retain. Like I always have to like, what's that word again? Oh, wait, impulsive. Because I work in addiction recovery where this word impulsive is discerned and, you know, spoken about, and you plan around it actually, because um, particular impulses can be quite damaging for some folks that don't have a language for it. And for some reason, I always forget that it's called impulsive. I can't, like, oh, it'll be about impulse. I'm like, damn, I better remember that freaking word. And I wonder why that is. And I wonder why that is. I mean, I feel like now that we're doing this, I'll always remember impulsive. But I've had to think about it for a moment at why I would keep forgetting it. So I guess I just need to declare that there's something that is dissociating me from the quality of impulse. I don't know. And so when you ask me what I feel impulse is, I don't know. It feels true that I've had to, almost out of survival, really live in my heart in the present moment, because the brain injury symptoms that I live with have me so easily dissociating that I have to come back and back and back. And so I don't know that I'm recognizing impulse like it's this thing that happens once in a while. It's actually a path that I've had to keep following, like attuned to what might need to be happening right now, over and over and over, so that I come back and back and back into my body, because the symptoms that I have are so high that they project me out and out. So I'm always coming back to my pulse, you know. So that feels true right now. I don't know how that lands with you.
I love that. I mean, I don't think of impulse necessarily having an origin that I can identify, but it definitely feels like when I check in there, it's what it's the spark of what wants to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you said, like, tuning back to it. What
Mm-hmm.
when you have, just because I don't feel like I know, like, what happens when you have symptoms, like you dissociate? What is the experience of that?
Yeah, I don't ever not have symptoms. So the major one is, since it was happening when I first met you, it started a few years before I even met you, before I had my child. So it's been about 22 years. I, because of accumulated concussion syndrome, I didn't know that that was it, post concussion syndrome. I one day passed out at work, just kind of out of nowhere, passed out at work and woke up in the emergency because they brought me there. And I woke up with an intense migraine that has never stopped in 22 years. So I wake up, go to bed with migraine. And it can show up in lots of different ways. I have lots of different variations of migraine. There's some that I've left my body and haven't come back as of now, but I have kind of this kind of mild to medium grade migraine at all times. And then that'll bring all sorts of other symptoms with it, like chronic fatigue and trouble concentrating, those kind of things. So those are always present. And so I don't ever not have symptoms. It's not just, it's just in the landscape that I'm in. I don't know how to explain it in that way because it's just been part of my being for so long. So it's a constant, I'm constantly, I don't want to use the word constantly. This, when you described the word impulse and you talked about spark, like this, like spark, and everything I do is to not lose sight of that. And trust that I'm fucking sparkly. No matter what it gets, I'm really freaking sparkly. Like, if I was a filter, I would definitely be the sparkle one, you know? But it gets so easy to internalize the symptoms like that's who I am. But it's just this constant coming back to, nah, I'm sparkles. I'm sparkles all over.
Wow. I did not know the extent to which that has been a part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And it challenges me to question even conversations around impulse, because I think, would you say there's an impulse towards the forgetting of that? An impulse towards dissociation?
Yeah, well, interesting to like unpack the way that I might be seeing impulse there would be response, nervous system
Mm,
response, the
mm,
impulse, the response of my nervous system. It's highly intelligent. I know it is because I'm still alive. And there's such a wisdom in dissociating so
mm,
that I can, be a mother, like a parent, so that I can engage with you, so that I can. And so for a long time, my impulse, I guess, or my maybe not so conscious way of meeting dissociation was to make it a problem. And there must be a problem if I'm dissociating. I have to like fix something about me. Now it's like I have such a language. See, this is what I'm getting. I'm trying to attune to texture of impulsivity for me right now. And when you're talking about follow impulse, I feel like to me that's what I call glimmer hunting. So like the impulse being a glimmer, like I'm looking for like, where's the glimmer? Like what direction do I want to orient myself? And for the next glimmer, that brings me back. And so I've glimmer hunted dissociation. So
mhm,
now I have such a language for it, meaning I don't make it a problem, that I can be dissociating and aware that I am now. Whereas
mhm,
before it was just happening. And then when I'd come back, I'd be like, where the fuck was I? Like, what? But now I'm like,
mhm,
oh, this is the thing. You need to do this right now. And like, so knowing that, what's needed, like
mm,
you don't have all the resources to not dissociate right now. So it's here present. It has something to offer. So what do you need to do? Maybe I need to tell Weena, like, I mean, okay, this might be happening while we're talking, and because I don't make it a problem, then it's so rich in its landscape. And it's almost like I would love to know on your end how you relate impulse and curiosity, because as soon as I'm like curious about it, I can follow impulses with so much more ease. As soon as
mm,
I'm
mm,
curious about the thing that I might be
mhm,
making a problem, then suddenly I like can follow impulse in such a genuine way because curiosity is there. And so, yeah, I wonder, what that means to you, how curiosity and impulse relate.
Oh, I have a lot to do with that. First, I think like when I hear you say there's an impulse towards dissociation, I also don't hold dissociation with a qualitative bent. I actually think it's a tool, it's a strategy. It has a lot of benefit, and it made me think about when there's the impulse, the next impulse. So sometimes there's an experience I have where I think I've identified or I'm following. Sometimes it's just responding. Sometimes I don't follow impulse. Sometimes I feel impulse and resist, and that's an impulse. So it starts to turn in on itself where it's like I don't actually know what it is anymore. So to identify it, it's meaningless. It's more, what is the experience that I'm having?
Yes.
And what you're describing, one of curiosity, indicates to me that I'm in a space of connection. Now, whether I'm connecting to impulse or something greater, I don't care. But when I'm in places of connection, I really have the capacity for curiosity, and that's cool. And then I'm like, I'm up for whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm disconnected is when I find it feels more like I'm holding a flashlight and I'm like, where is it? Where's the impulse? Like more of a demanding kind of point of uh, origin, like something specific to orient to.
Uh-huh.
And that can be interesting, and I can pursue that for a moment, but eventually I find it pretty limiting. So it's sort of like I'm actually not that connected to something. And in SEAM, we play with those states of, physiological protection or connection, and how they yield a different relationship to impulse,
Mm-hmm.
or a different relationship. The relationship to impulse then yields a different state, sort of out to in or into out.
Mm-hmm. What's coming for me
Yeah.
as you speak is now I'm curious about the relationship between, or how they fit or dance together, of intuition and impulse.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, this is the never ending linguistical challenge for me. The semantics of somatics is a challenge.
Okay.
Sometimes I can get really excited when it's finding the right words that explode my understanding into something bigger.
Mhm.
And sometimes I feel very defeated when I feel like the thing I'm describing is in between words
Mhm.
and I can't find it in
Uh-huh.
a word. So intuition, I think, is interesting. To me, intuition incorporates more, I would say, for me, more wisdom, more of a longer view through time. It's just a part of the essential nature of that intuition. Whereas impulse feels much more tangibly related to aliveness.
Interesting. As I associate intuition with aliveness, there's something coming
Mm.
because I consider myself intuitive. Like, it's a, not to make a solid identity with myself, but like when I tap into what the sensation of that is for me, then I feel alive and present. And so when
Mm.
you are speaking about impulse, what's coming to me is like my Buddhist teachings of that everything has a wisdom state and a constricted state. And so if I'm to think of impulse in its constricted state, I've had so many examples as I've bared witness and have built deep reverence for addiction patterns and the impulsivity there, and the constricted states of your body's telling you something, but there might be a distorted message, you know? like an impulse with a distorted message, a distorted view. That is still, yet even there, that distorted view has wisdom. Like it's come for a reason. And so there's something about that, the beauty of the constricted and wisdom state of impulse, and how that might play out in something that would disconnect you more for yourself. Impulse could, in its constricted state, disconnect you more, and in its wisdom state, bring you back to aliveness, Yet I can't say that there's no aliveness in a constricted state also, right? Like, just deep. It has a lot of depth, right? Depths and layers. But that's bringing me joy to think about the different landscapes and perspectives of impulse when it's coming from that distorted space, and when it's coming from an intuitive one, a clear one, of insight, maybe. That's pretty cool. Thank you for letting me. I've never really, it's funny because it's, the work that I'm in has so much to do with what you're talking about, yet I've never really discerned this word as much as I had just had 10 minutes with you. So I really love it.
Oh, I have so many. I mean, in particular around addiction, I have a million questions. But I wanted to, the one thing I was thinking when you said constricted also has aliveness, I was just thinking of protection as a form of guaranteeing survival, and that's inherently in it is aliveness, the desire for aliveness. So that really made sense the way you said it, the aliveness and constriction. Yeah. So addiction, I've brushed up against it with this investigation of impulse. My husband is sober 23 years, so it's a conversation we enter in a lot. And I kind of can't get enough of it. And we haven't landed on a place of like, yeah, we're on the same page, which I love. And he challenges me in really good ways. So I love that. And I'm curious always around, because the word impulsivity that you brought up is so deeply associated with addiction, like not being able to control impulse. Whereas my version of impulse and impulsivity is a pattern or action of impulse, but not the impulse itself, kind of what you were describing. And so I wonder, like, how in your work with addiction in particular, do you bring, or how do you describe and hold value for impulse? Because it sounds like you do.
First of all, I just don't define it for anyone. Like you're saying, you have your experience of what it might mean, and your husband has theirs, and they might be different. And of course they are. So I feel like, as far as me having a role of working with someone that is struggling with, impulsivity, I give them opportunity to define it for themselves, like let me know what it means for them. Because that, the curiosity around that will reveal so much, right? And so I don't know, how do I want to define this? I feel like the way that I work with people is building their curiosity muscle. So if there's something that they're being impulsive about, how can we infuse that with more curiosity and wonder, and less judgment and stigma and shame and all those things? Like, wow, okay, damn, like that really took you over. Like, let's slow that down. Like, what was there? And when I work with someone for a long time, we can start noticing patterns, and even like how seasons might bring particular impulsiveness or things like that. And also creating opportunity to slow things down so that you get to know the texture. I think you're talking about like the texture of impulsivity itself. Like, can you recognize like that you're about to get into the landscape of something quite impulsive? And that takes a while, and that takes a lot of like, again, a lot of wonderment and slowing down and being in total awe and like, wow, this is being a human. Like, holy shit. Yes, in addiction recovery, there's the extra, you could die from this impulse, this impulsivity. And that's hard to hold because I, as a person working with the other, can't hold them in fear. There's so much space and trust that needs to happen, and trust that there's wisdom in that impulsivity. It's really hard. Weena, I worked at first a lot in opiate addiction, and with the fentanyl crisis, I can't say that I showed up without fear a lot of the times at first. I was very attached to them staying alive, and that took away from some curiosity sometimes, like wanting them to like, let's get a fucking strategy in place, like let's make sure. And that's important. And it's not as important as building that friendliness towards themselves, building that curiosity muscle. I don't know if I'm kind of talking in circles, Weena, because it's a really tricky one. All I know is that I had to let go of strategies, of things you're supposed to do when particular patterns are there, and just really fucking listen, pay attention, reflect back any glimmers, any celebrations, any little aspects of coming back to aliveness, so that they could know both the texture of impulsivity and also of aliveness. Like, how are you discerning that you're in a constricted state of impulse, and how are you recognizing that you're in your wisdom state and this is actually what you need to do? And so that takes a lot of slowing down, takes a lot of listening, and it takes a lot of trusting in someone's innate worthiness and intrinsic health, that no matter how taken over they might be by impulsivity, that there's a really wise energy there ready to access. I don't know. I got to slow down what I'm saying. It's so big and so layered, but I hope that something of that landed for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struck immediately by I think I feel and I'm always more or less in touch with this, but just now it really hit me. It was just the privilege of indulging in the landscape of privilege of impulse, sorry. Indulging in the landscape of impulse in an exploratory way, knowing I'm safe. Like that's such an incredible privilege. And that is something my husband will push back on often, which is don't fuck with people's sober lines, Mina. Like that's, like if this is working for them, like back up.
Yeah.
And still I have such deep curiosity of, but is it no because there's a lack of trust in your body, or is there a no because it's just, this works, this keeps me alive? Like I'm not going to question it. I'm not going to push back, and I'm not going to doubt it, because that equals losing sobriety equals losing my life. And so it's with care that I approach that conversation, and awareness of not having, I've been in the rooms myself, but I can't say that I have like a hard lived in experience of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has. I think everyone has addictions. Everyone has. And I mean in ways that have brought me to my knees, possibly. I don't know. That's not true.
We could bring that.
I don't know if that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, we could bring that back to privilege. And your addictions aren't stigmatized.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely, and I have been brought to my knee. It's what brought me to the rooms initially, was like, I can't function with this impulse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think why I didn't hang out in, I think, 12-step recovery for very long. I was there for maybe 5 years, was I felt like I got the support and like the frame changing that I needed. And I wanted more of my body to be a part of what we were processing together.
I get that because I was, I went to 12-step or an Al-Anon because I was in a partnership with, my husband at the time was in relationship with alcohol quite deeply. And so I was going to Al-Anon, but I'd had done what we've done together, which was this yoga therapy program. And I'd also done what was called like group facilitator training, where we were going through 9 themes, which were like very similar to some of the steps, but it included the body,
Mm-hmm.
and gave me more of a language. And I work better that way. Like I need to start with body, see what body's saying, and then process from that place. That's the way that's my neurodiversity. That's how I work. And other people work differently. So I remember appreciating it so much because it did give me a language that I wasn't hearing anywhere else. And then I was very much longing for an embodied experience of moving through a process. And it just reminds me that, man, those rooms are so fucking important because it's instant community, like whether you, quote unquote, believe in the 12 steps or feel like they're of benefit, community is. No
Oh my
matter
God.
what, it fucking is. It so is. And so I'm so grateful they're around. Although it doesn't resonate with all my clients. And there are definitely some textures of shame within the communities, just like in any community. But like knowing that some of my folks, and myself included, could just go to sit in a room where people just want to hear and see and process together. We need more of that all over,
100%.
So that's huge because, when your nervous system can settle knowing it's being seen, then you could access curiosity a bit more, right? It's really hard to access curiosity, to even discern your impulses if you're in fight or flight, if you're in total survival mode. And you will be if you're not seen by anyone.
Yeah.
You just will be. And I realized that most of my work in the end was not about, again, I'm bringing back like strategies or not. It wasn't even about sobriety necessarily. It was about points of connection, compassionate exchange, normalizing a human experience that would shift someone's physiology, that would shift their capacity for intensity,
Yeah.
But that on my end takes a lot of fucking work.
Oh my God.
Space without judgment, checking in with my stigmas and my conditioned, colonized mind and all these things, like dismantling that so I could be heart to heart and human to human with someone. I am deeply devoted to that. And it's like the biggest commitment. Yet it's our natural state. It's like this, like, why is it? And I know why. There's so many systems at play that keep like putting us back in these conditionings. But I am really, Weena, deeply committed to clearing so that I can be heart to heart with someone. Because then it's no longer about savior mentality or like me trying to make something different for someone. It's literally, we are now in an exchange together. I'm offering you to you, and you're offering yourself to me. And that exchange is the best medicine.
100%.
And I would
And it
say
takes away.
my impulse is always towards that. Like, what's going to bring me towards that? And that is what, like, Johann Hari said this one, he has like a 15-minute TED Talk. He wrote the book. Why am I forgetting his book now? I've said it 1,000 times. But anyway, the TED Talk is called Everything You Know About Addiction is Wrong. And at the very end, he says, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And then I was on a path. My impulse was like, find out what that means. Like, find out what connection means. Like, okay, great, Johann. Now, how do we get to that? Like, what does that mean? What's the texture of that? What's the landscape of that? Like, how do I need to show up to cultivate that? And I've been on a mission of that ever since.
But it's so powerful. I mean, when you talk about this, I feel so, I feel a sense of, I mean, this sounds, I don't know how it sounds. I feel a sense of humility at the challenge of the work that you do. I feel a sense of awe in what it means to meet the edges of people's lives with them. It's powerful, and it is I'm grateful for the reminder of that space, that it exists, that people are there working tirelessly, and how hard it is to be in that space, and to keep seeking that place of connection that you keep saying. Like, what is that? What does that look like? What does that mean? Logistically, what does that look like? Is that 15 minutes? Do I have an hour with this person? Are we sitting? Are we moving around? What does it actually look like? How do I show up? How do I let go of all of my preconceived desire and impulses to help, to make them like me, to have it be end in success, whatever those things we come to our exchanges with, learning how to let them go. I mean, the thing I can compare it to is just the practice of authentic movement, that however long that exchange is, it's just being with the person. You're not evaluating, you're not fixing, you're not even commenting really on them. You're just really trying to show up honestly as a witness, honestly as a mover, letting yourself be seen, and cutting through the language and the ways and the social patterns that we get trapped by, that keep us away from what you're describing, is that connection. Mm-hmm. And I think even when we try, and I think people who are comfortable moving, or dancers or performers, can be like, oh, right, let me move. But very quickly you feel that you're not in connection. Very quickly it's apparent that you're wanting to be perceived a certain way. So you have to keep reckoning with yourself, because there's no exit ramp. You're just out there in yourself with your body, being beheld by someone in all your you-ness, and even inside the struggle, which it makes me think of the way you just described showing up. Like, beholding the struggle, beholding the aliveness, beholding this whole human without trying to press your agenda or aesthetic or ideas into it.
Yeah, it's huge. And like, I guess I was gifted with, how do I want to say this? You know, my background with you is one of using movement to reconnect with our bodies. But then my path continued after doing trainings with you, where I got so ill that I could not do any movement anymore. I remember teaching a yoga class, and somehow half of the students ended up being from this particular meditation community. And I remember I was losing so much weight. I was so ill. But like that was my one point of connection to be teaching, you know, to be amongst a community where we're seeing and hearing each other. And I remember after class, the student came up to me and said, I don't know what's happening with you, but I think you're really going to need to understand the nature of your mind to get through your next step. Because I can't see you being able to use movement anymore to the way that you have been. And she was absolutely right. And I entered, like, they had training levels at this meditation center, and I entered the first one. And when they would have walking meditation, I'd have to lay down on the couch. I couldn't even do walking meditation. It got so bad. But then I had to redefine movement for myself. I had to redefine those points of connection that my impulse was to go mountain biking or do like these things, like hang out in yoga postures or all these types of things. So like, what does movement mean for me now? Like what will be my points of connection now? And so I bring that sense of deep grief of losing movement when I'm with somebody moving through big suffering struggle pieces, right? How do we redefine? So this is happening and it's your feeling, it's robbing you from all of the things that you usually gravitate towards to feel yourself, you know, which I get to some degree, that texture. Okay, so how do we hang out in that landscape and get really curious about it? I don't know. There's some aspect of like grateful that I lost the ability, like physical ability to such a huge degree, in a way that I had to get so curious about it and reinvent movement and reinvent ability for myself. And I think that's been really important when I meet others. Like what ways, how do they need to reinvent or reword or flip a script around points of connection? I don't know. It's huge. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. How do I mean, just your description of losing points of connection as a recognizable experience that you can sense in others when the words are totally different or the experience is totally different. But using that as the frame is so clear. Like I hear it when you say it. It's so identifiable. And that experience of grief can be one to explore deeply and transform within, right? Yeah.
Fuck yeah. I definitely am not big on bypassing grief. I think there's so many glimmers in the landscape of grief, you know? And so on my end, grief makes the witness quite uncomfortable a lot of the time. I don't want this person to feel all this grief, or what if I one day feel all this grief, you know, like, and so how can I have deep reverence for those types of emotions that bring up so much discomfort in ourselves and each other? For me, it's like kind of fun now. It's like, okay, grief showing up. Let's go. Like, and the key is including myself in the exchange. It's not just somebody else going through grief. If I'm witnessing it, I'm there too. And if I'm not there too, and then I'm not witnessing it actually. I'm just, deciding what's in front of me, not actually witnessing it. That's a fun thing for me to dismantle, that bullshit, that conditioning of like, I'm going to name what's happening for you because I'm uncomfortable with what's actually happening here.
I love how you said that. I think that happens all the time in a million different ways. And for me, because my language is through seam and authentic movement at this point, it is witnessing somebody in their awkwardness or weirdness in a way that you're like uncomfortable, having to reckon with your own reactions and ways that you are being with this person in how they're being. Like it is completely and physical, right? How many exchanges, I'm sure this is true for you as well, but you can call it mirror neurons or co-regulation or whatever you want to call it, when two people go through an experience together. And that happens every time. Like your grief, I'm witnessing it. Your movement, I'm witnessing it, affects my body. My physical body is shifted because of me really showing up for you. And then that changes how I move. And it's not just two people, there's a whole field that we're within and experiencing together if we're able to show up for it the way you're saying.
Yeah. What I was trained in is called compassionate exchange. So exchange is happening no matter what. No matter what, we are intermingling energies, no matter what. If we develop a capacity to recognize this exchange, then we open up the possibility of showing up compassionately to that exchange. And so for that, the part on my end, I need to own my impulses. I need to own my shit, and name it. Like, whether I'm naming it outwardly to the person, like, whoa, like, you sharing this with me, I have to say my stuff's like wanting to get in the way right now. I just want to like dump my stuff. And I'm really, it's taking me some energy to like, let this be your experience. I need to own my shit, or else I might just have the impulse of like, oh yeah, me too, blah, 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 blah. And when that's not helpful at all. So that slowing down of like owning your impulses, speaking to that instead of going there is huge, because then it informs, because then it might be like, the other person might be like, fucking go for it. Like, I want to actually hear this. Or they might be like, thanks, I actually really just need you to freaking listen to me right now. And then I get to reattune with the new impulses that are coming. But like, when we can really experience the exchange and we're in full ownership of our impulses, our stuff, man, it's so good. And it takes a lot of pressure of figuring something out. I don't need to figure anything out anymore. I just need to let the exchange land in me and speak to that. So, like, Weena, I'm noticing that exchanging with you, I'm getting this oscillation of like calm and then spurts of power. And it's really cool. I don't experience that with everybody, but I experience that with you. I can just speak to you directly of what I'm experiencing, and that has value, instead of like trying to cognitively come up with something to tell you about like how this was for me or something. You see how much pressure that takes off? Like my clients will be like, just really speak from their hearts and speak to what's actually happening for them, and then ask, so how do I like tell somebody that? I'll be like, exactly what you just said. Spot fucking on. That was so honest, so clear, and you're fully owning your stuff when you're saying that. That's going to have value. Of course, you can't be attached to how they receive it. That'll be their own experience and value, but damn, like, that has value right now, that you're just letting it land, owning it, and speaking to that. It's huge. And the word that we haven't used at all, which is like my whole, where I put almost all of my discernment and curiosity, is integration. So it's like one thing to recognize impulse and another to integrate the energy of that impulse. Because then if I can find a way to name it, get curious about it, have some sort of compassion for it, then suddenly an integration happens and it can become a resource for me. It can come to a wisdom state instead of a constricted state. So this aspect of integrating our impulses or integrating our experiences is huge when thinking about resourcing ourselves for really hard times, for things that might sideswipe us, So the more we can integrate these moments, these moment points of connection, these ahas, these insights, the more we can slow down when the tough stuff comes and have a bit more points of that capacity to be with that aliveness that we talked about at the beginning, And that's a whole fight. Like integration itself is so layered and so deep. There's so many, I could talk a whole other 3, 4, 10 hours about just that process. But I would, if anything, love to spark in anybody listening, like, what does it actually mean to integrate an impulse?
I love the question. And I want to know what your answer is. Like, if you think even just in integrating, well, we had integration. I remember that was part of our training too. And it was always it felt like the sauce on top of the meal. You're like, does integration look like a verbal exchange? Does it look like a sort of knowing? I heard you say enter the wisdom state. If something's integrated, what does that look like, or what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's all those things and none of those things. It's absolutely dependent on the moment. Here's an example when working with chronic pain. So I've been in chronic pain for a really long time. Persistent pain is another way to speak to it. And I remember going to like pain management or pain, what did they call it? And to understand more about pain or pain systems. And I remember him telling a story about, he was a yoga therapist and chiropractor and all these things. And he said the most interesting thing, the years of him working with folks in pain, is you just never know what doorway is going to complete the stress cycle, complete the pain cycle. That he had worked for years and years with this particular woman, working on like yoga therapy things and things for the body. And the thing that released her pain was that she started taking singing lessons again. And within like a month of being in the choir, this like persistent pain that she'd had for a decade was no longer there. And so something integrated there. Right. And I don't even know if she knows, but I'm very curious about the mechanics, the anatomy of integration from the years of me being curious about this, because for me to survive, I'm constantly needing to integrate my experiences of pain, or else they're just going to pile up as more pain and more pain. But what feels true is the result of integration is the charge of what I'm experiencing changes. I know that I've integrated something because there was an overwhelm and now there's not. There's a charge. There was like actually like impulse wanting to happen so bad, like a vibration of impulse. And now it's not there. It's not there. It's liberated. It's grounded. I'm reconnected. So I know that that's the fruition of integration, a liberation of sorts, a transmutation, a transformation. And what I've learned over the years is there's a lot of depth and layers to this, but first thing that needs to happen for me to even get towards integrating something is that I need to name what's happening for me. Like, where am I at? Like you're saying, like I've got to name the impulse itself. But for that, there might be a lot of work needed just to get to a point of naming something. right? That's where nervous system education was really, really freaking important. It wasn't really being taught at the time. We didn't really get like trauma informed training in our yoga therapy, which blows my mind when I think about it now, because we were working with trauma all the fucking time. And that language about, proprioception, like other ways of reaccessing the moment so that we can name something, so that we could just, okay, this is what I'm fucking experiencing. I've got an impulse right now. That naming has so many layers, right? Has so many steps to it. But within that, so if I'm to say the steps of integration that I've understood, first is naming it, and that kind of opens a portal. And then I get curious about it. And that curiosity offers insight on resources and what might be needed, where the constriction and the wisdom is. And so, and then from that place of curiosity, I can then extend out kindness, which is like extend out some warmth and loving kindness, not make it a problem, whatever's there. But that kindness also includes boundary setting, right? This is where I'm also like, yes, no, so that I can actually experience compassion towards whatever's happening for me. Without boundaries, I can't. Brene Brown says the most compassionate people are the most boundaried people. That's for ourselves too, right? For our impulses too. And then from there, this natural thing happens. I've named it. I got curious. I extended out kindness and compassion, and suddenly it's liberated. And there is when now I genuinely know how to move forward. That's where the action, genuine action or authentic movement comes from. Because if I just named it and then declared it a problem, I would just want to fix it right away. So I go from naming to taking action, but in this impulsive, constricted, impulsive way. But if I name, hold a little longer, get curious about it, be in this wonderment state about it, love it, then the action that I take from there has such a different quality. The impulse that I'm following there has a much more liberated quality. Does that make sense? So if I'm in the step where I'm just trying to name something, what's cool about it is the other steps are there to help too. So, okay, I'm having trouble naming something. Okay, can I get curious about that? Can I be loving towards that? Can something be liberated here? And what's informing me how to move forward, knowing that I can't name this? You see, like, so it doesn't matter where you're at. You might be in like this huge curiosity space. You can't get to loving kindness yet. Like, I'm curious about this, but I don't fucking like it. Like, but that's okay, because you can get curious about that. You can be kind to that. You can liberate something from there, you see? So those aspects, those steps, be still and notice, be curious, be kind, and be honest. Like let the energy honestly liberate itself. That is what I come back to as the kind of framework of integration. Woo, sorry, Alina, that's huge, but like that's really much like.
Oh my God. It's beautiful and it's so clear and it feels so yours. Such a like there's so much guts and organs in it when you're talking. It's great. I don't feel a brittle cognitive structure. It has meat and I can feel it when you say it. There's a part I was wondering, and I'm thinking while you're explaining, like, is this integration where there's a point, so we move and witness, and then share, and there's a very specific way of sharing from I and on both roles. And that often can feel like integration. And sometimes I think maybe what's being integrated, I can't know. Almost that it's happening without me. And recently I've been, you were mentioning trust in the beginning a lot. That word was coming up. And I think of that word as a charged word when it comes to these worlds of addiction, because of relationship to body has been so fractured. And lack of trust around impulse or even around bodily desires at all, and for good reason, and right, like no judgment there. But this idea of sort of trusting that, and if part of this comes from somatic experiencing, but trusting that the rippling out or like the effect of what's happened is continuing to happen, whether I'm a part of it or not, whether I'm cognitively participating, and that there's some the rivulets of the experience are going to drain into the whole of my flow, whether I want it to or not. And I don't always necessarily know what those are until later, or until there's so much repetition that it becomes more visible, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. And what I'm seeing is you've integrated this aspect of trusting the process. Like you've gotten curious enough of like, you know what? I might not feel like I'm still doing something, but something's still happening. I've witnessed that a few times, and you've taken the time to pause and acknowledge that as something benefiting you. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's definitely benefiting me. Like right now in my body, I'm trusting that there's a process going on and that's settling something in me. That's integration, right? So that the texture of trusting a process becomes a resource for you.
And I remember you were saying trusting your body as a process, that something's still happening. And then
yeah.
And
Like,
then
integrating that. I feel we learned that at Phoenix Rising, you know, like that part where they were asking us to integrate was kind of pausing, like knowing that a session was going to have to end after an hour, and maybe like there would still be lots of stuff, and really evoking that trust in trusting the evoking the trust in trusting the process. To do that, we needed to bring up integration. So, you know, now that you've experienced this, what's standing out for you, like evoking curiosity in their experience, and how might that forward into the world. So those steps that I spoke about, like noticing and naming, and then getting curious and having loving kindness around, and taking action from there, is what we were learning in the training that we were in. Whereas like, okay, and reflect on your experience. Like, what did you notice there? Naming that. Oh, how does that relate to your current life circumstances? Evoking curiosity there, and like bridging that. And okay, is there any wisdom coming from you? Like there's loving kindness coming up, and like normalizing your human experience, knowing that your innate teacher is present, you know? And then from there, what action step could you take? So we were doing that all of the time, and that helped the person trust the process, that maybe they weren't going to be in this experience with them anymore, but they'd just taken a piece of them, of the experience with them, through that little moment of integration, you know? I was teaching that to massage therapists, like, why not just take 5 minutes and ask them, how did this massage session benefit you? Like, are you noticing, just like letting them pause and actually be curious about what they just received? Yeah. And then, okay, well, knowing that, like, is there some things you want to do this week until we see each other again? You see, like, there's a moment for integrating and really allowing whatever therapy session to be much more resourcing, you know, because you've let your brain know that it was beneficial. Like, you have to let your brain know that it was beneficial. And for that, you might need someone to evoke curiosity on, you know, in the space for you. Anyway, it's funny. It's really good. I really like integration, because you were saying it's like, it was like the gravy on top. To me, it's the actual meal. Like, like integration is the actual meal, because I could have a 20-second experience and integrate that for a really long time. Like it doesn't matter how long the experience, actually, it's how deep the integration. That's how it feels for me.
Yes. And it seems like the why. It's like why you're doing any of it.
So that, like, you know, this Jane often says, so that, like, I take care of myself so that I can engage with others in a more compassionate way, or, you know, I don't know, integrating all those things. Anyway, it's my jam. I nerd out on integration. Obviously. but it's like literally kept me alive. And what I find is what we are deficient in those steps that I talked about. So first being able to name, then get curious, kind, and take honest action, is we're deficient in curiosity and kindness. We want to go straight to naming and then taking action. Name, take action, name, fix, right? And that gets us spinning in our impulses that might be quite constricted. So if we can infuse our experiences with more curiosity, wonder, awe, and kindness and compassion, boundaries, all those things, we're not going to spin out so much. But we're really deficient in curiosity and kindness. Like our world's not set up to build curiosity muscle. Everything's told for us. Here's what you should think. Here's what you should wear. There's no, whereas curiosity, and then we're also not taught boundaries. Boundary work is like something so radical these days, and it shouldn't be at all. But this aspect of being kind is knowing what our boundaries are and having those respected. Oh my God, definitely deficient in those.
I'm always equating it back to like, well, what does this look like in what I'm talking about all the time or interested in? And I was thinking of attention economy. It's like it's sort of a trending idea, and practicing attention. And I think for many people, meditation is that, like removing distractions and focusing on one thing. For me, it's been witnessing or being in the role of moving. And sometimes it's 40 minutes that we go and then change roles. I don't know. It depends. But the boundaries are very clear. I can count on the timer going off, so I can let go of sensing if it's enough or too much or how much, right? So the boundary is there. And then it's an open-ended, the only thing to do is be curious. There's really, you don't even have to move. I remember one practice where I almost fell asleep, and I thought, what would it be like to fall asleep and while someone's watching me? So it's like kind of a curiosity kept me from sleeping, but it was there as a wondering. And it does feel like something to practice, not just the focus of attention, but what you're saying, the actual act of curiosity is something we can practice. And I hear it in what you're saying in glimmer hunting, and that it's a muscle. Resma Menakem talks about getting your reps in, or we talk about returning to practice. And that's what it is. It's building up an ability, a power, a skill, so that it's available and it doesn't have to be so hard to do. Yeah.
But the curious thing is, building the muscle must include, the only way to build the muscle is to recognize that we're not being curious anymore and coming back to our curiosity. Like mindfulness, like building the mindfulness muscle is not about staying present all the time. The actual building of the muscle is like leaving and then coming back, leaving and coming back. So there's no problem with the leaving. It's like the intention of coming back, though. Like, okay, I've left, come back. If I make leaving a problem, I'm not coming back anytime soon. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
So,
yeah. And often it does feel like attention, like the building of attention is about a single point of focus, which I don't know anyone necessarily can sustain, or that it's even beneficial to. But like you said, the fluidity, I think about this with tech all the time. Like, for me to engage in something on a screen in a real way requires a little bit of transition of something before and after something. But I can watch my children move fluidly so easily between in and out, in tech, out of tech, holding a conversation, responding to a text. And it's an interesting ability of attention, actually. I think they have a greater capacity to move between the virtual and tangible world. Like, it's just, there's a facility in motion there that I don't necessarily think is better or worse. I don't have a I'm not worried about it, but it is different. That's what I notice. And so, like all things, is that fluidity back and forth. Um, in the end, is it supporting their ability to show up both places? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a curious one. I'm not sure. I keep thinking about like, I don't even know if this will relate, but I'm sure we need to end at some point, but I just keep remembering I've really had to embrace my neurodiversity. So I'm hearing you say that they can go from one state of mind to another with not too much difficulty, and questioning if that's actually true, or if you're just that's your projection, that's what's happening. Me needing to really embrace my neurodiversity, knowing that I can't do that is not a problem. That's how my brain works. And so I could stop saying, hi, I'm Anie, I have a brain injury. And I could be like, hi, I'm Anie, and I celebrate neurodiversity. So I don't know what's happening with your children besides projections that I might have. I just know that there's so many ways in which to experience attention. And I just really like witnessing all of the different ways, and then checking in when, it might be really constricted way of approaching attention or practicing attention, or it might be a wisdom way. Like, well, anyway, it's a whole other thing, but it's been helpful for me to just know that there's a spectrum in attention, not a way, not like,
Right.
it's how a one pointed focus, that's attention. Like, is it? Or like, I don't know. I like feel I can really be pretty attentive and also have all these things happening at the same time. So it's more the quality than, again, it comes to the point, like points of connection. This is like attention as a point of connection. And so if they're connected in that one place and then boom, they're connected in the other, they're engaged, that sounds pretty healthy. But if so what I was trying to say is the image that came to me, which is random, is I used to race downhill mountain bikes, and biking was my whole world. And I had a whole slew, for a while, I had a whole slew of bikes. I had a downhill bike, a cross country bike, a road bike, a cruiser bike, a BMX bike. Like, they all had their very precise things. But then I had to okay, that's you need to and I got one bike to do all of the things, which is called the all mountain bike or something. And that's great. It could do all the things, but it could not do it to the degree. Like, I couldn't downhill like I could with my downhill bike. And I couldn't, I can't go on the road with as much speed as with my speed bike. So yes, it's doing all these multiple things, yet it does take away, it dilutes something. I don't know. It's kind of random. It might not relate, but for some reason, that's the image. I had the image of my all mountain bike and being like, cool. But it's really focused and get the full potential of particular things sometimes too.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I think I'm hitting my edge. I'm slightly starting to disconnect a little bit. So yeah.
Who's this lovely little furry thing behind you?
Yeah. She's my little therapy dog. She's a Chihuahua Jack Russell.
What's her name?
Tia.
Tia.
I named her that because I was having mini strokes, which are, the short version is TIA, and she was helping me co-regulate so that my likelihood of having seizures and stroke went down after having her. Anyway, that's where her name comes from. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It also means auntie in Spanish dialects. Yeah.
So sweet. Gosh, I feel like there's a whole world of questions and conversations that I feel like I want to have with you. And I also want to respect the pace and the slowing down and the separating of maybe what's happening, and respect it and like feel into what is here that wants and to happen and be said now, and that we can do it again. I guess that helps me not feel too sad about leaving, but that there's like, oh, there's like a whole playground. Like there's all these other play structures that we get to go on.
Mhm. Would you be open to just practicing something that I do as part of transition of like moving from one experience to another? That's like kind of like a mini integration. And
Yes.
I like to, I call it like a gift word. So to take a few moments to allow the experience, like reflect on the experience and see how it's landed in you. So this conversation we've had. And then from that exchange, what you've received, offer back a word, a gift word. And I like to say like gift words, although mine will feel really pleasant from this conversation, but gift words aren't necessarily roses and unicorns, like a gift word could be, it's whatever's honest. That's the gift.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to do that? Should we offer each other?
Yes. Yeah.
We'll take a moment. And if, yeah, you can go if you want first, but just letting the experience sink in and see what word comes for you.
Want me to go?
Right.
It's two, they go together, it's two, but it's cracks and fissures.
I love
And
it.
it feels, there's like this very like drive to go there, like feeling it, and but I'm a little outside of it and I want to go, and there's a little fear, but like I'm deeply interested in the what's inside, or what wants to come from there.
I love that. Thank you. I love that. That's probably big. Potency of joy hearing that. For me, sometimes it's not always a word, it's an image. And at first I just had this image of like an ocean skyline, And then I saw the albatross because it wasn't being recorded, but we pulled the card and it was the image was the albatross, and there was just this like the visceral sensation of the glide, like how the albatross will just glide for hours and hours without flapping its wings. So that effortless glide, that's what I'm sensing right now.
Oh, that feels good to hear, to imagine also.
Yeah. A little more of that today. That'd be great.
Oh. Yeah, when I'm listening to you, I'll have like an idea, like a card comes up and I'm like, oh, I want to remember that. But then I listen and it sort of goes away because I'm still listening, and I want to hear you. I don't want to hold on to the card. And I know that I'll leave and move into the rest of my day, and then they're all going to go like so I know that's coming. Just gonna
Go.
it'll be there, and I will see it as an invitation to pass them back and forth.
Yeah, I love it. Yay.
Anie, thank you. Oh my God. Such a pleasure and a joy. And I feel like I'm just beginning to re-know you. And I feel very touched by your purpose. It feels, I don't know if that's the right word, but there's like a clarity in your movement on this plane. And it feels good to see that and witness it.
Thank you. It feels good for that to be seen, because sometimes I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? what am I doing? So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a joy for me too, these, reconnecting. I know that I'm in good relation when I could go freaking a decade without talking to someone, and we just pick right back up. So thank you, Lena, so much.
Oh, thank you. Oh, Anie is just so freaking brilliant. And I so loved our conversation. They just have this way of speaking that feels so alive and so right here. And that really was delicious and also really potent for me to experience. I'm just a huge, huge fan. I hope you are too. Please go check out their work at schoolofreverence.com and on Instagram at School of Reverence.